Let's move from leg to leg. If I want to move my weight from my right foot to my left, I must first pull with the left. So the active leg, the one that's doing the moving, is the empty one, or the emptier one, the one that has less than 50% of the weight in it. So that's the left leg is pulling. And then once I get more than 50% in this foot, this becomes the active leg. So this leg pushes. And then this leg bends. And then this leg straightens to push. Pulling myself into this leg and then pushing myself into this leg. The important phase is really the straightening, because if I get that right, it's like stretching a piece of elastic. If I stretch the piece of elastic, then I simply need to let it go and it will spring back. So we want to condition the body so that it elastifies, it becomes like elastic. So I really stretch this leg, and then when I allow that stretch to go, it will pull me back. I want to feel the inevitability of the return. Stretching, pushing, straightening here, and then letting that bend into the pull. Coordinate your breathing with it. So the straightening of the active leg is like an out breath. You're pushing something out, something is extending outwards. And then when I bend the leg, that's like the in breath. The same when you're breathing, meditating, concentrate on the out breath. Try and breathe out as much air as possible. And then you just need to release that, and the air will start gushing back in for the in breath. Breathing out, breathing in. I want to feel the straightening of this leg really driving me down and out. So this leg is becoming straight, and this leg is not simply bending, it's becoming round. This feeling that this is like part of a circle here. So I have to keep the knee out and I have to come onto the outside edge of the foot. So the straightening of the straight leg is forcing me into the outside edge. Without that, you won't get into the ground. You won't develop a root. The root doesn't go straight down. It cuts down like this, like a scoop. The straightening here creates the roundness in the leg here. Good. And now let's just relax into riding horse. The difficulty here is sinking. And sinking is a feeling of a flow down your back. My back is flowing, my buttocks are melting down into my thighs, into my hamstrings. So I very much get this circuit going, flowing down the back, and the sense that something is coming up the front. And that is difficult. And now let's just breathe. Trying to pull myself down here. I'm trying to draw myself down the backs of the legs. This is the breathing in phase, remember now. And then this is the breathing out phase. I want to bring my awareness, my attention to the back. That stops you from thinking, because thinking all happens in the front of the brain here. I'm just trying to slip back into the back brain, the back heart, the back dantian, so the Ming Men, and that sense of flow down my back. Relaxing again. And now using the legs to turn. I straighten this leg and that pushes this hip round. And then I bend this leg and it pulls me back to the front. And then I straighten this leg and it pushes this hip round. And then I bend. Straightening the leg turns me away from the front. Bending the leg turns me back to the front. This is bow and arrow. And this is riding horse. If I want to simply turn and not move side to side, then I need to, as I straighten this leg, to push this hip round. This leg has to straighten a little bit to push this hip back. So at that point of finishing the turn, both legs are quite active. This leg is straightening first, but then this leg has to push this hip around that way. I want to feel the real difference between the straightening back leg and the straightening front leg. My straightening back leg is pushing this hip round, and there's a feeling that it's creating a straight line. So it's pushing the ground that way and producing a force in this direction. So it doesn't really matter which hand. Whereas the front leg, when I come into it, it's actually pushing the ground that way to get energy coming up in this direction. And I want the energy to come out there. So it has to loop. It has to loop around the body and basically go back the way it came. So when I straighten the front leg, there's a real feeling of it spiraling around the body. When I straighten the back leg, it's just a feeling of like a tangent whipping off the circle like this. So this is what we want to try and feel. So I straighten the back leg and then I straighten the front leg, and the front leg straightening just coils around me. And this is the difference between front foot and back foot energy. Back foot energy has a real simplicity because it's basically just a straight line, whereas front foot energy really spirals and twists, and it's much more damaging. Same thing, but now it's letting the arms go. So we want this exactly the same thing in the legs. This gets difficult because we're so used to getting the legs and the arms doing the same thing. But now the legs are working very clearly and the arms are just wrapping around. The nice thing about this one is you can really feel that coil as the hand goes around your shoulder rather than straight forwards. So now we're really feeling the twist around the body. But I want to feel it still coming from the legs. It's the action of my feet on the ground. That's the controls. Now let's just try it again. So straightening this leg, turns you. Straightening this leg now turns you even more. So this back leg now is really being stretched beyond where it wants to go, because this leg is forcing even more of a turn. And that produces a real pullback when you release that. So now I want to feel the real pullback here, the release of the elastic. So this pulls here, the foot is now pulling. And that's turning me. And I want to feel that leg active all the way through. So I'm pulling with the leg. Now this leg starts pushing, but I want to keep my attention with this leg as it starts pushing here. I straighten this leg, then I straighten this leg, and that turns me as much as possible to this side. Now my back leg is really being stretched and pulled now, so I let that go. That pulls me round. And basically the arm and the leg of the same side doing the same thing. So the feeling that this is also contracting. And then that wraps around my body here. And there's a sense that as this leg starts pushing, the energy gets transferred into the other hand. Like this hand has wrapped around, has passed the energy to this hand, and then that hand keeps it going. So let's try it again. So stretching the back leg, stretching the front leg. Just let that go, and this leg will start pulling. As long as you've still got a grip, as long as you're still sinking, this leg starts pulling. The hand starts contracting as well. And then I turn. So now this is beginning to push to get that strong turn. And the hands wrap around, and the turning comes into the opposite hand, the cross energy. So just feeling this leg all the way through to the end, and then switching your mind to this leg to pull here. And now this leg is actively pushing, and then this leg contracts, starts pulling, and then is actively pushing into this hand. You need to feel that sort of emotional difference between the pulling phase and the opening phase and the stretching phase. So when you're pulling, whichever part of your body is pulling, there's a sense of drawing in, like doing this phase in the breathing exercise, pulling in, almost huddling into yourself. Then when you start straightening and expanding, there's a sense that something is coming out. That's where you're letting your energy out. So this starts pulling, so it's like I'm turning, I'm huddling up here, but then it starts pushing. So now something starts coming out, and then it starts pulling in. So it's just the breathing exercise, but feeling it now more as a yield and attack. Here you're yielding, you're drawing something in, and then here you're attacking, you're issuing your energy, and that comes from the straightening of this leg. It's not straightening so much that it starts pushing me back into the other leg. It's just straightening, almost like it's buttressing itself against the ground. Bring it to here again. And now let's try the figures of 8. You can think of it as the 2-circle exercise, or just see it as a continuous figure of 8 around the hips. What we want to feel is these parts here. So I'm straightening the leg, this one, to throw the arm around its circle. And then I bend the leg, and that starts the circle coming in. And it also turns this into like a part of a circle. But in particular, it opens up this point here in the groin. And it's that hollow which is creating like a suction that draws my hand in towards it. And then I just let the hand fly off. It's the opening here in my groin that draws the hand in. And also draws me down, because it's not just sucking at my hand, it's sucking at the ground. So I'm being drawn down by the opening in my groin here. It's connected to the sacroiliac, but it's very much a sense of a dish opening up, a bowl opening up here. And again, that has a feeling associated with this, and that's what we want to catch. This is important, otherwise the sacroiliac won't open up in the right way. And it's really strong here because you can feel the artery. It's where 3 acupuncture meridians all cross at the same point. So there's a lot of potential gathering of attention at that point. back to riding horse. It's similar to this. When you're in riding horse, the chest isn't closed. It's not pulling in like this, because if you were like that, your elbows would be in like they are now. So I'm really pushing my elbows out and my shoulder blades are expanding. So this is actually opening up. It's just not opening up in a brazen way, which would be this. It's pulling open like that. So it's pulling open into a wide bowl, or like a satellite dish. And now let's try the same thing, the figure of 8 on with the shoulders. So again, I'm pulling in and it's my shoulder blade coming apart, creating this sense of a hollow here that brings the hand in and sends it back out. My shoulder blades have to be really loose so they can come away readily from the spine and reach down my arm. And then I want the same thing in the leg. I want my hip bone to feel loose so that it can reach down into the foot. And that will create this hollow here. Think of the elbows here. So my arm's going out, and it's my elbow really that starts bending, that brings the hand in and the shoulder out from the spine. So when a joint bends, it doesn't fold like this. It bends in order to create a hollowness, an openness, a container. So if I just bend my arm like this, then obviously this is just compressing here, and my fingers getting squeezed by the arm. So I want the feeling that it's actually opening, the joint is actually opening and I'm embracing it. I'm containing that openness. This is the roundness of Tai Chi, which is so important. Catch that feeling of this place here, just opening and hollowing. It is quite emotional. It's almost tearful. And one will always be more difficult than the other. One side of your body will be more open than the other. Aggravate around the feet now. And using it to go into the outside edge of the foot. As soon as I start going into the foot, into the heel, I'm already outside edge. If I slip out of the outside edge, if I slip in, then it will be difficult to get back out again. So you have to see this loop clearly on the ground and just try your best to trace it. And it's the back leg that's difficult, because the knee wants to collapse in as you come through the front leg. And so it's difficult to, you may have to sort of keep it out all the way. So even when you're coming around the front foot, just try and have the sense of this hollow here. And then it won't be so difficult to get into the outside edge when you go back. And then some of the other foot folds. It's difficult to trust the outside edge. When you see someone like my old lady, you know, when I stand her up, she's like this with her knees collapsing in, complaining of the pain. And then I just gently ease her knees out so she's more in the outside edges. And the pain disappears. And you can really see that she stopped being the weak, pathetic victim and has just become strong and in herself and cheerful. But it's difficult because you have to take a risk. You know, so to actually get myself in the outside edge, it's like I'm taking the difficult path in a way. So there's a real risk to it. And I have to be in some sort of condition to even attempt it. Belief, really, faith. But, you know, we're all weak when it comes to that, especially nowadays. And again, it's spirit. So what springs everything open is the spirit. But of course, the spirit needs coaxing. You need like an input of energy from somewhere else just to spark the spirit, like kickstarting a motorcycle before you can drive it anywhere. So someone that's, you know, good at spirited work or spiritual work is just really just very good at borrowing energy. They're just snatching inspiration wherever they can. And that will spring everything open. And then everything's working correctly. This is the idea behind practice, daily practice. You're subjecting yourself to discipline. You're putting yourself in the way of spirit. Discipline is just doing something you don't want to do. But we have to, remind ourselves that we're doing something we don't want to do, not in order to suffer and have a hard time, but in order to open up a new space where what's happening is far better than anything we could have imagined. This is the secret of spirit that we have to learn afresh each time. And now let's try just with the stepping, same thing. So I'm going around this foot, and that steps with the other foot. What makes the figure of eight not simply a figment of your imagination is the use of the legs. So when I'm straightening this leg, I'm pushing myself into this leg, pushing myself out, and I just direct that push around my figure of eight. So it's this leg straightening that forces me around the figure of eight of the foot. And that just feels so much more real than simply following a trace in my mind. Push, this leg is pushing me around this loop. Now this leg is pushing me around this loop. And then the other foot around this leg. I use the body like this. I'm not just tracing this figure of eight on the ground. I'm etching it. I'm sort of carving into the ground with my intent. Just try some of the breathing again, but now just really trying our best not to let this happen as we bring the hands together. So rather than this, it's this. I'm drawing myself down into the legs. My legs are sucking me down. So if I was to keep my spine straight, then I would be really leaning back. So I have to bring my head forwards and bend my spine to stop myself from falling backwards. Pulling myself down into my legs. And then I can straighten the legs to come back up. And this is difficult because it's like a different part of me has to give orders. Let's just finish with a little bit of this. Feel the Danjian. So it's, when we normally get it going, we're feeling the heart being buoyed up by this action in my knees and my legs. But it's the same feeling in the Danjian. Think of your Danjian like a balloon that's full of water, a bladder. And here I'm just buoying it up. I'm keeping it on this bouncy, springy platform. And you can just imagine a figure of eight or figures of eights within the bladder of the Danjian. So there's endless movement. It's flowing and churning, slopping. I'm going to want to keep my sacrum relaxing down. There's always the feeling that your sacrum is trying to cut underneath your Danjian. Almost like your sacrum, which extends down through the tail into the perineum, is a cup that's holding your Danjian. If I stick my bum out, then I'll lose that, and my Danjian will feel like it's just falling forwards. It's slipping off its natural platform and falling to the ground. So I've got to get this going in the legs, but at the same time feel my sacrum relaxing underneath my Danjian. And again, that has a different mind. The uprooting mind, the mind that's just naturally getting underneath everything that you approach, scooping down underneath the footing of the objects in front of you. And coming up the other side, so you're containing whatever it is that you're seeing in a container of your back energy that has come back up and over the top. So the sacrum is a natural cup shape. It's got a natural curvature. And we're just feeling that and making use of it. For that, the Danjian has to be, together. It mustn't be dispersed. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to contain it. And that's this shape, the shape we make when we're meditating. That's exactly what this is doing. It's pooling the dantian. It's making a container, a skin for the energy that's contained in the dantian, a bladder. As my heel goes down, there's a sense of it going down as something cutting up. Remember, we're going down to come up. From the heaviness comes the lightness. And then just let it subside. The legs appear straight, but they're not. It's always a slight bend. As soon as you bend the legs, there's energy flowing through you. It's easier to feel that with another person. If they're standing there and you put your hand on them and then you just say to them, just bend your legs a tiny bit. As soon as they do, you just feel yourself flowing through their body into their ground. And that's just because they've become energetic. They've opened the channels. They often don't feel it. So it just takes a lot of training to be able to just bend the legs and think, oh shit, now I'm in energy. Now everything is just flowing and moving. Almost like you allow an instability to come in for the sake of the richness of the situation. So the legs are bending. So if the legs are bending, but you're not actually getting any closer to the ground, then they must also be straightening. And this is the thing, you're always doing both things. So my legs are just trying to release and let me just fall down, flow down. But at the same time, something is driving up through that, injecting into the ground and also injecting up. And we just want to feel all of the forces in operation. And then there's the turning. So part of me is wanting to slip this side, but then another part of me is wanting to slip this side. So there's always a sense of a figure of 8 on that horizontal plane, looping around the feet, around the hips, around the shoulders, around the head. And that endless movement, that's what John called the humor of the natural process. So there's a sense of it being playful and fun and almost making you giggle. This is the feeling of that sort of light energy. And we're just looking, can we find it everywhere? Is there any part of my body that's just not moving? And just letting something slip in, a sense of playfulness. And so we don't want our lightness to become heavy, obviously. So the discipline we subject ourselves to is heavy. We're forcing ourselves to do something we'd rather not do. But I want it to change my mind and heart. Metanoia, it turns the situation from a heavy, disciplined one into a playful, almost silly one. Everything is moving. And then you're oscillating between the two, and the movement gets too much, then you can bring some more discipline in. When it starts to get too heavy and a little bit dead, then you can just bring a playfulness in. This is yin and yang Taoism. So our mind is simply maintaining that equilibrium, that balance